Can we begin? It's a huge crowd today. How many are local? Can you lift your hands? How many are from foreign correspondents? A lot. That's good. Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much, for taking such an avid interest in the harmonized elections of Zimbabwe. It really shows that you've got a passion for our country, and more important, that you value democratic practice at work, because that's what has brought you here, whether you are local or you are from foreign countries. Your numbers alone indicate that we have nothing to hide as a country with our democratic practices. And the fact that you were invited by the Zimbabwe government speaks volumes about its effort at showing the world that the hard-earned democracy which Zimbabwe enjoys is part of the world democratic movement. It's a road we are traveling. We are a young country. We are traveling that road. Only 42 years old. Other countries are much older with democratic practice. But we are trying best. And more important, the invitation across the world also shows that we really aspire to try to become a model constitutional Republican democracy. That's what we aspire to. I want to go further to say that you are observing the people of Zimbabwe cast their vote. The results are now being collated, and the prerogative to announce the results under the Constitution of Zimbabwe belongs to the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. So we, as a party which is responsible, we are making sure that we give Zimbabwe Electoral Commission the space to do their job and come out with a result according to the constitutional mandate which arises from the Zimbabwe Constitution of 2013, which was a national effort including ZANU, which is the main party, the ruling party, but also the main opposition at that particular time, which is the MDC, and of course other interested stakeholders in Zimbabwe. This is the constitution which we are using. It is a product of every political player, of every major political player who is in the game. Even the interviewing of the personnel for the ZEC was a parliamentary process which included the people and the deputies from the opposition. So we are very conscious as a party that we do not in any way try to impinge on the integrity of institutions which we were party to their conception. We are very careful about that. We respect those institutions. We see them as important pillars in nation building. They've got a historical role to discharge. They also have a political role to discharge on the people, for the people of Zimbabwe. So I want everybody to bear in mind that the constitution we are using was a collective effort of MDC, who is now moved into the CCC ramp, of which Advocate Nelson Chamisa, he has become the leader of that particular formation. But, he can't, it's not a cafeteria. You can't go and choose your menu. It's a la carte menu. It's offered as it is. You can't choose what you want in your constitution, which you participated in, and then reject other aspects of that constitution. You can't do that. Having said that, I want to salute the people of Zimbabwe We await the results. We don't know who the winner is officially, but I can safely say now that there is one winner, and it is the people of Zimbabwe. They are the winners in this process. For a little over 2 days, they went about their task of fulfilling their constitutional mandate to choose who they want to be their ruler at local level, at deputy parliamentary level, but also at the most important office in the land, presidential level. This is what the people of Zimbabwe were doing. And across the land, they did it in the most exemplary of manner, notwithstanding the challenges which may have arisen from an administrative point of view. They went about their business. They did not fight. They did not try to upend the system. And they go in the booth as individuals. They make a decision inside that booth as an individual without anybody breathing down their neck. You make a decision there. So any aspersions about Zimbabweans being programmed in any manner before election vote so that they go inside the booth as a robot, it's not true. We are not, there are no species of Zimbabwe which is a product of chatbot. They are conscious people making their decisions. They do not have software which has been pumped into their heads to make them go and make certain decisions predetermined. No, they left their homes, went to the booth, made their decision, and you saw the process step by step. I think many of you had the opportunity to see the people in the booth. Step by step, the checking, the cross-checking of names. Do you belong to that constituency? Is it your voting booth which you are in? Your name is there. Here is your pen, and the ink is then marked on your finger, indelible ink, to make sure that you prove that you have voted and you cannot come back again. And then you are given the freedom to go inside the voting booth and make your decision. So people who try to make a lot about the pre-environment of elections want to make it as if people of Zimbabwe are software programmed. No, they are not software programmed. They make conscious decisions. I mean, there were efforts at trying to make an issue about the voters' roll. Of course, the constitution of the country does not oblige. But anyway, people went to court about the matter. In a Republican constitution, there are three arms of power: the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. They cross-check each other. The laws we are applying, they were made by the Parliament of Zimbabwe, as I indicated earlier on in 23. The application of the law is made by the executive wings of the government. In the event that there is disputation or infringement, as any Zimbabwean who is a constitutional entity is free to go to the courts, which was duly done by a number of individuals. And the effect of it, of course, was that we went headlong into the elections with a lot of litigation. This was an attempt to make sure that the system is seen to be transparent. So as a ruling party, we have no issue about people going to the courts to go and find a determination about an infringement. We actually applaud the courts, including a new novel entity called the Electoral Court, which is meant to make decisions as quickly as possible so that it does not upend the democratic process of voting as proclaimed by the President of the Republic on a particular day. So in any event, we need to congratulate ZAC that notwithstanding all those litigations, they still managed to have a voting on the 23rd of August, by and large. Because of the litigation, and because it's the first time that we are using the electoral courts, it really made ZAC work overtime. Maybe mistakes were made, definitely. There were also time delays. There were also logistical issues. And we are very happy that the precedence, the supremacy of the people exercising their vote was the guiding principle in general, and an extension was given to those polling booths where voting had not yet started because the voting material was late. It is in the same spirit that ZAC, maybe much to the chagrin of the ruling party, allowed certain members of the opposition who had 10 days to register as candidates, but only left it at the last minute to register as candidates. They had 10 days. They went there without their money, without their documentation complete. And ZAC made a decision that their registration be extended until midnight, when closure was at 4 o'clock on the 21st? The 21st, yes. On the 21st. So here is a bias by ZAC towards giving every Zimbabwean an opportunity to go and vote. Yes, there was a decision by the courts, High Court, on certain candidates which was then overturned by the Constitutional Court. It was in the same spirit that the Constitutional Court felt that the vote is very important. We must give the people a chance to vote, rather than to say administrative issues hobbled the people from voting. I want to remind the foreigners who are here, the foreign correspondents, we are the first national liberation movement in modern times to fight an armed struggle to the point of victory and force an armistice on settler minority racist aggressors, and really invite the hand of their imperial sponsor, England, to host an armistice called the Lancaster House Agreement in 1979. Out of that, a near victory army decided to lay the arms down, assembling dangerous gathering points, and give the people of Zimbabwe the free rein to choose whom should be their president. By the way, there was no voters' roll in 1979. There wasn't. In the event, we assumed office by the ballot box in 1980, not by the ballot. Many other countries, I won't mention them, we have national liberation movements, took it upon themselves that because they won the military victory, they are the government. We actually became a template for the United Nations. I'm a diplomat. I've served in several countries. I was in New York. We became a template of how to resolve issues after armed confrontation within a nation. So I want to emphasize that our democratic credentials, one, they were hard-earned by our sacrifice. Two, we actually exercised that democratic right to assume office. I want to dispense with the sanctimonious notions of some certain Western countries, particularly those with an imperial record which never gave Africa democracy, to try to say they can now become proselytizers of democracy in Zimbabwe. No, no, no. Colonial Britain never gave the blacks of this country, the African majority, a right to vote. It never did, from 1890 when they occupied until we won it by the armed struggle. So equally, Washington, a country which has got a history of slavery of as the mainstay of its original economy, cannot come and say we are paragons of democracy, therefore you Zimbabwe, you must do things our way. And there is a sobering aspect, the prospect of seeing, the reality of seeing a former president in a mugshot, which is President Trump, because he was refusing to accept the outcome of an election. It just means that the road to democracy can be very difficult, even for those sanctimonists who are in Washington. It's a challenge. We accept the challenge, we try our best to make sure that we travel the road of democracy. That's why we have observers, that's why we have principles from SADC. Now, coming to the SADC principles, we want to make it very clear. They are a product of the member states of SADC. They are not administered by a particular individual who may become the head of a delegation. He is only in what is called a fiduciary role and delegated responsibility. So we hear of a certain head of the delegation from a certain country of the SADC mission without prior consultation with his colleagues, fellow observer missions from sovereign states, and without them even having given reports back to their countries, even gone back to their secretariat, because the secretariat is the collective secretariat of SADC. He decides to delve into matters which have nothing to do with his mandate. SADC has got several committees which deal with various issues of SADC, of Southern Africa development. It even has a constitutional review committee within its ambit. If anybody has got issues about the Zimbabwe laws, that is the relevant body within SADC to come and question the statutes of the sovereign state of Zimbabwe on a peer-to-peer basis as fellow acceders to the SADC protocol of unity, of cooperation. It is not the duty of a particular individual to arrogate to himself the role of a constitutional review committee of the laws of Zimbabwe. So, Mr. Nevers Mumba from Zambia, we call you to order. Don't delve into the laws of Zimbabwe. If you've got issues with those, tell your relevant institutions, not the SADC Observer Committee, your relevant institutions, to take it up with the SADC Secretariat in Zambia. Otherwise, we know that he is a preacher. He comes here, he has got his friends, and he was seen hobnobbing and accosting himself with the CCC. We don't think that's what Zambia stands about. He even goes further to try to make an issue about civic organizations and chooses some against the other in Zimbabwe. He favors ZANU and others. Then he castigates FAS on the other hand. This is a bias. I want to remind you, America had a civil war in 1861, starting in 1861. Because of the duty to protect the unity of America, certain of its citizens decided to form the American National Rifle Association. It's a historical product of the American evolution in its as it became a modern state. Today, the NRA is one of the most active of American civic bodies, to the extent that it now decides to lobby for certain politicians with a bias towards the Republicans. Not only that, you hear of periodic massacres of school children, of people in shopping centers, because America says you've got a right to have a gun. We went through a civil war. We went through a liberation movement. One time the gun was my friend. It's the only other thing I could hold on besides my anything. But we dropped, we after independence, so we know guns in Zimbabwe. We don't have a gun culture. But the Americans have maintained a gun culture which is now causing so many massacres in their country. But nobody wants to speak about that from other countries. Now you want to make an issue about our historical circumstances. Our people are naturally vigilant because they fought a war, and they will continue to be vigilant, and they have institutions which are a continuation from that war, like FAS, of our people, like civic committees which are looking at the security and intelligence to say, are we safe? I always emphasize the point. If in Zimbabwe you go into a rural area or certain places and you cannot be identified as to whom you want to marry or not get married to, within 3 to 4 hours, the CIO, the intelligence organization of the country, will know. Where does that come from? It comes from the war. You had to know who is who. Know your friend, know your enemy. If you don't, you die. That's what, because there was all sorts of nefarious institutions of terror, of murder, of disappearances, the Selous Scouts, the Special Air Services of Zimbabwe. All these institutions, the Pfumorevan, these are historical institutions which made life difficult in rural areas. So vigilance is natural in Zimbabwe people. So to make an issue about FAS and other historical institutions about Zimbabwe is to question the origin of the state. And for Mr. Nevers Mumba, I want to remind him that our original training about Zimbabwe Defense Forces came from the Zambians. We were hosted in Zambia. We were hosted in Tanzania. Maybe because he is from a later day party, he can't go to the archives of his country and really understand the role of Zambia in the birth of what is now the Zimbabwe Defense Forces. I want to politely remind him to go and read the history of this country before he starts castigating Zimbabwean entities. It's not right. Every country has got its own history. That's why I made an allusion to America and its National Rifle Association. And by the way, the Americans had actually copied it from England, which is also a National Rifle Association. So the idea of vigilance in communities is not new. And the idea that an association can lobby for its interests, just like the National Rifle Association does in America, it's not new. It is the same as ZANU trying to lobby for the interests of the opposition. But there's we draw the line in the sand. You don't arrogate yourself the role of a statutory body which has got the sole responsibility of collating and announcing elections. It's not your duty. Let that body which does the job be given the full mandate to try to have a parallel system so that you instigate prejudice and you try to challenge the integrity of our institutions before they've completed their job. No, no, no. That won't be accepted. We know the pain of giving birth to the Zimbabwean state. We know the threats which face the Zimbabwean state. We make a distinction. There is the Zimbabwe state, you take it as it is. There's political contestation by political parties, that is allowed. You can contest for political party. But the moment you try then to challenge the legitimacy of the Zimbabwean state, who are you? And to challenge it on behalf of post-imperial interests in Europe and in America incenses us, more so some of us who fought in that war. Because the birth of the Zimbabwe state was a painful process. Out of every 5 people I went to war with, only 2 came back alive. And most of them with maims and traumas of that war, and blinded and unable to cope with life afterwards. The Zimbabwean state is sacrosanct. We will go to any length to defend it. And we brook no interference, and we fear no power to defend the Zimbabwe state. We have no issue about people contesting as political parties because it's a constitutional provision brought by the same army and defended by the same state. It is the same state which defends that aspect. They all sleep peacefully, to even the opposition today, just like the ruling party. All of you. What makes you feel that you can come to ZANU-PF headquarters freely and sit like you do and take your pictures? It's because you know there is law and order in the land. Who is administering that law and order? The Zimbabwean state. Please, give it respect. Give it respect, the Zimbabwean state. So I want to emphasize that point, that we are dismissive of the ramblings and mouthings of Nevers Mumba, who abuses his fiduciary role as the head of the Zimbabwe SADC Observer Mission and arrogates to himself a dictatorial mandate as a solo individual to say, I'm here to promote the interests of a fellow preacher. He's a preacher, I'm told. He probably used to come and compare the Bible notes with Chamisa, maybe. He's a preacher. So their camaraderie in the gospel of Christ has nothing to do with his role as an observer of the Zimbabwe elections. We await the outcome of the elections. I will not try to say who is winning or is not winning, because it's not our role as a party to do that. It is the role of ZEC. We leave it to ZEC. We remain confident, the same confidence which made us campaign so hard, the same confidence which made our president scour the land, holding rallies, meeting churches, meeting businessmen, that I will get the vote to make me the president of Zimbabwe. We remain confident that we will score a majority which will make him the president of the republic. And with luck, we may get even 2/3, way beyond what is needed to rule the country. We may get 2/3 majority. We only will be happy, of course, with a simple majority, which gives us power. Yes. But you know, if the people of Zimbabwe were willing, we get 2/3, we celebrate. We have no problem with the performance of the opposition. It is the appeal to the Zimbabwean electorate. That's why I said earlier on, the winner in this election is the Zimbabwean people. They have shown the whole world that they can exercise democracy in their own way, in a peaceful manner, have the patience, the fortitude to stand for hours, even extending into the night, because they value the insertion of their X on a piece of paper. Clearly, that person is not pre-loaded software driven. No. He's making conscious decisions. And that's what the people of Zimbabwe do. They made conscious decisions to die in huge numbers to become free. They also make conscious decisions to go and put their X on the vote which they fought so much for. That's what I wanted to say by and large. On a separate note, we have our Vice President in South Africa. He was part of the BRICS Plus Summit. We are very happy of the progress which the BRICS have made as a putative global institution which is meant to address the historical neglect and marginalization of the global South. The behavior which we are making issues about today, about people who want to poke their fingers at Zimbabwean institutions and our democracy, originates precisely from those powers which gave themselves first imperial power, courtesy of an early access to the prowess of the Industrial Revolution. Europe streaked ahead of Africa and other continents. Then industrial production made them powerful. And they then had a gun before everybody else did, even though the kind of gunpowder was invented by the Chinese. And they formed a cartel at the Berlin Conference to deny other nations the gun, so that it becomes an instrument of control, of dictatorship, to other countries. Of course, in 1917, one European power, Russia, broke out of that gun cartel and decided to make the gun a democratic weapon for everybody. It was the democratization of the gun, which eventually made it possible for us even to defy England and its proxies and become free. But there are vestiges of that era, which includes the abuse of a currency of one particular country, which we have seen Zimbabwe suffer inflation, which is way beyond physical possibilities. To have any hyperinflation, which is the velocity of money several times faster than the speed of light. It's an impossibility. It's a physical impossibility. But Zimbabwe went through that terrible experience. So the BRICS countries are now addressing the weaponization of currency against other countries, and we have been a victim. So we hail the decisions and the progress which the BRICS countries made in South Africa, especially on the African continent, and we are particularly delighted that the major oil powers are all now in one club, because the basis of the American dollar as a world currency is not the American military. No, no, no. The basis of the supremacy of the American dollar was American economic progress translated into the ubiquity of one particular commodity, petrol, for mobility. And they made an agreement with Saudi Arabia that anybody who buys fuel must pay it in US dollars. Saudi Arabia agreed in 1971. That's why the US dollar is what it is today. It buys every commodity, the most important commodity of trade. But there are now challenges to that. And Saudi Arabia is now a competitor because America is now a net exporter of fuel. So they are competing on the market. Maybe Saudi Arabia doesn't want any more US dollars because it is competing with America for the market. So to have Saudi Arabia, Iran, UAE join Russia, and together they account for 70 to 80% of the world production of petroleum. And if they can decide that we use local currencies or our own national currency, it's good. After all, we in Zimbabwe have made more progress already by using gold as a way to get out of the inflation which was buffeting us because of the weaponization of the US dollar. So we are on that road already. We say to the others in the BRICS countries, as they search for a new way out of the weaponization of the US dollar, say, welcome on board. We have been for 22 years trying to struggle out of that predicament. So more are joining us. Isn't it a good thing that we are trailblazers? I told you about what we did from ballot to office instead of bullet to office. We were trailblazers. Here we are again. We are trailblazing in a major geopolitical financial paradigm, which is a resistance to the weaponization of the dollar. The main thing is it has started. You may fulminate as to why, you may argue as to why it's not going to be easy, but you can't argue for the rationale as to why it is happening. And once there is a rationale, there will always be a will. And when there is a will, there is a way. More so when the biggest buyers of oil now are Russia, are China, with the second largest economy in the world, and India, with the fifth largest economy, and soon to be the fourth. These are the economic powers, emergent ones, and they are all in the club. It's a good thing. Maybe America may also now begin to know that it should cut its cloth according to its size. Because you can't sustain that kind of military prowess by printing money and then loading the burden of inflation to the world. It costs 4 times for Africa to borrow money than America pays for it. It costs 8 times for Africa to borrow money than Europe pays for it. Can you imagine the burden of development which we face because of the abuse of the Western currencies? So hail to the BRICS. And I'm very glad that Zimbabwe formally acknowledged that it has applied for membership. We were searching for a global institution which could serve our interests as a country, because we struggled as a landlocked country under onerous circumstances to defend our integrity, our independence. Now, it's a wave. The more the merrier. We are happy with that. So, it serves as a warning and a caution to those who, when they come for election observership in Zimbabwe, they want to act as surrogates of outside forces. That's why the police moved against some of those organizations. We are happy that they were nipped in the bud because they were trying to abuse social media to create contestation based on falsehoods about who has won and who hasn't won. When the referee is one, you don't have 10 referees in a match. You have only one referee in a match. You can't have 10 whistles, 4 or 5 whistles refereeing a match. We can't have that. So there we are. There we are. That is where I am. We want to again welcome you in your numbers and say it's testament to our openness. Please, those who are genuine, proffer your advice. We'll take it and sift through it and see whether our parliament can then make it into a law. But we don't make arbitrary decisions because we have a constitutional process and a sovereign institutions through the expressed will of the electorate which make those decisions. They are not arbitrary ones. They go through a process, a legal and constitutional process of consultation and then an enactment. I thank you. Thank you. You can shout so that we save on time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, Ambassador, I will not stand up for the sake of my colleagues that are shooting right off. My name is Kelvin. I am a journalist. I work for the Namibian newspaper in media. And really thank you for the opportunity that you gave us here. The issue of funds has really attracted the attention not only of the SADC observer mission, but also has been mentioned by the Commonwealth Observer Mission as well as the European Union Observer Mission. And in this press conference, you've characterized these FAS as a civic-led organization that is in the ambit of such organizations like ZANU-PF, for instance.
Yes.
What we'd like to know from you is whether you can give us confirmation as to whether FAS is registered as a civic society organization. And secondly, what is your response to allegations and reports that, well, this organization has been carrying out surveillance work and intimidating and coaxing voters to vote for ZANU-PF, not necessarily operating like a civil society organization that's lobbying, but rather it is intimidating people and telling people that when you get into the booth, we will know through surveillance who you voted for. Are you able to address those allegations?
First, it's a registered organization, and I'm not chairman of FAS, but I'm sure my guys will be able to look at this relevant papers to show that it's a registered civic organization. I emphasize we fought a war, and vigilance is in our DNA. We organize our population to make it daunting, not intimidating, daunting for any outside powers to think that they can come and disorganize the people of Zimbabwe and conquer again. Because what was the bane of Africa when we were conquered, when we were enslaved, when we were colonized? It was disorganization. And a national liberation movement, the most important task, I spent my youth, I left university to organize people. The most daunting task during the war was to organize people, to offset the asymmetrical warfare advantage of the Rhodesian army with the organization of the people. They became Goliaths with blind eyes and deaf ears. We became Davids, if I can use the Bible connotation, with open eyes and wide open ears. We had information. Information is power. We will never, as a country, relinquish our role of trying to get information and intelligence for the protection of the Zimbabwe state. That's why I gave you the experiences of the Americans with their National Rifle Association. That's why I gave you even England as a similar institution. We have no apologies to make for institutions which have their origin in our hard fight for independence. We have no apologies. Your second question about FAS intimidating, I repeat, people go in a booth as individuals. They are not shepherded into a booth. They make decisions as individuals. The Zimbabwean voter is not programmed by software from FAS. He is not. And the performance of the other opposition parties, particularly the main opposition parties, is testament to the fact that people of Zimbabwe are making decisions on a free will basis. Look at their votes. Look at their votes. So why would you want to disrespect the integrity of the Zimbabwean voter? Why would FAS want to actually impinge on the integrity of the Zimbabwean voter when they know that at the day of the voting, he is alone in a booth and making a decision? If anything, what you have alluded to precisely would be a losing gambit on the part of us, because the decision to vote is made by an individual inside a booth. It would be folly